Hey guys, it's Tahira and today I'm going to be doing my June wrap-up. I know it's been a while since I've done a wrap-up and I don't know, I've just been busy, and this month I actually read quite a bit more than I usually do. I read a total of 7 books. My average is usually around 4 or 5 books, so I'm really happy that I read more, and I didn't even know that I read this much until I looked at all the books I read at the end of the month. I thought I had only read like 5, but I actually ended up reading 7, which is I think great. But yeah, without further ado, I'm just gonna go ahead and start talking about the books I read in June. So the first book that I started in May and finished at the beginning of June was The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. This is the prequel novel, the new Hunger Games book that just came out in May, and I actually filmed a whole reading vlog of me reading this book, so I'll link that down below if you want to check that out, and that has a lot more of my thoughts as I'm reading the book and at the end. I gave A Ballad of Songbirds and Snake 3 stars, and it does have a lot of mixed / negative reviews, understandably, because obviously this is a book that is coming like years after the original trilogy came out, so no one really knew how it was, and a lot of people think that it's boring and not much happens. But as I said, I gave it 3 stars, so I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it either. It was kind of like an book for me. One of the things I did like was seeing all the differences between the games, and because this takes place 64 years before the 74th Hunger Games, and so it was really interesting to see all the differences between the Hunger Games now and the Hunger Games during Katniss's time. There's like a lot of differences that I was not anticipating, like just like the way tributes are treated in this book versus how they're treated in 64 years later. So yeah, just seeing the little differences was super interesting to me. I think that the pacing of this book was really off for me because a lot of the book was really boring. Like there was a chunk in the middle where there's, I think, like if you read it, you know, there's like a change in the book where like things change and everything, and I just thought that portion where he was like when the things change, I thought that was boring. I don't know how to explain it without giving spoilers, but again, my reading vlog is spoilery, so if you want to hear more of my like in-depth thoughts about what I'm talking about, you can go check that out. But yeah, I just thought the pacing was off, and there were some parts that really bored me, and I had to like not force myself, but I had to like be like, okay, come on, time to read this book. I loved learning about the origins of the Hunger Games. In this book we really come to know like how it was created and why it was created and how it was implemented, which was really interesting to me. That was one of my favorite parts. I think when you read the 74th or when you read the original trilogy, you always wonder like how the Hunger Games started and what caused it. We know how it caused to start, like the rebellion and everything, but just how it really truly started, and that I got a little bit of that in this book, which was interesting. But in the end, I wanted a little bit more of how Snow became as evil as he is in the 74th Hunger Games. I think we did get a little bit of that at the end. I just wanted a little bit more of his descent into evil. I feel like we didn't get as much that I wanted personally. The next book that I read in the month of June was Frankly in Love by David Yoon. Frankly in Love follows a Korean American teenager named Frank Lee, and he calls himself a limbo, where he is like, he imagines himself stuck between 2 cultures, American culture and his Korean culture. And his parents want him to date a nice Korean girl, but he falls for a American white girl named Britt Means, and he kind of makes a deal with this other limbo named Joy Song, who also has a boyfriend who is Chinese. So they both start this whole fake dating thing so that they can fake date each other but actually be dating their actual partners. But it's a fake dating thing, you know how that ends up. They end up together. Like I don't think that's a big surprise. I'm so sorry if that's a spoiler, but I think you kind of get that from the synopsis. I give this book 3.5 stars. I really enjoyed some parts of it, and some parts were eh. I think there was a lot of really great discussion about what it means to be a child of immigrants. As a child of immigrants myself, I could find myself relating to some parts of it. Even though I'm not from Korean heritage, I can still relate to the part of being a child of immigrants. There was some cheating in this book that I feel like wasn't as, like, there were not really that much consequences for it. It was kind of really quick. It just happened. It happened a little bit, like, a little early into the book, and I don't know, it just was left behind. It was never talked about again, which I kind of didn't like. And I didn't like David Yoon's writing style sometimes. I think I don't know if he was trying too hard to write like a teenager, but like some things like he would call the main character Frank Lee and his friend Q would call smartphones fartphones, and then I don't know, I just cringed at that. And then yeah, I just didn't like the way he wrote a teenager's voice. Like, I don't know, it just didn't sound authentic, and it felt like David Yoon was trying to write a character that he thought sounded like a teenager, but in my mind it didn't. Personally, for me, some parts of the writing style didn't mesh well with me. But overall, I think this is a good novel about what it means to be a part of two cultures and trying to find your place in both of them and trying to still form your own identity. So I think if you're looking for a book about that, then this book is a good book for you. The next 3 books I read was actually in the entire Folk of the Air series by Holly Black, which of course is The Cruel Prince, The Wicked King, and of course the last book, Queen of Nothing. I'm not going to talk too much about the first 2 because I've read this before and I'm pretty sure I've talked about both of them in some wrap-up. But again, if you didn't know, The Cruel Prince follows our main character, Jude, who is a human, but she's living in the fairy world. She was taken away to the fairy world at a very young age, and so she has learned to kind of find her place as a human in the fairy world. And then like there's a lot of politics and a hate to love between Jude and Cardan. But yeah, this is a very, very popular YA novel. I'm sure you've heard about it, and I gave both of these 5 out of 5 stars. I think this is absolutely one of my favorite series of all time, and yeah, I'm not going to talk too much about both of these. I will talk about Queen of Nothing because I read this just this month. I actually gave this 5 out of 5 stars, and a lot of people talked about how it wasn't as good as the first 2. I can kind of see that in some ways, but honestly, like, I wasn't complaining. Like, it had all of the things that the first 2 had. It had the betrayals and the politics and all of that good stuff. So I thought it was as good as the first 2, honestly. I love Cardan and Jude's relationship. The way it started and the way it ended was just I just loved the development of their relationship in this book. Like, I think The Cruel Prince or the whole Folk of the Air series has the hate to love relationship is unlike anything I've seen in YA novels. Like, the amount they hate each other at the beginning and then how their relationship starts to form, like, I haven't really seen anything like that in any other YA novel. So yeah, like, the relationship is just one of my favorites because it's not just a hate to love where it's like they hate each other and then they love each other, but it's like a hate to love to hate to hate. It's just so good. I will say that the ending is a little bit cheesy and a little bit predictable. I mean, it was gonna have a happy ending. We kind of knew that from the beginning, but I think I still really enjoyed it. I'm still satisfied with the way that it ended, and I just love the whole series so much. The next book that I read in the month of June was Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. This book follows 2 girls, Camino Rios and Yahira Rios, and they're both living in separate parts of the world. Camino lives in the Dominican Republic and Yahira lives in New York City, and both of them have the same father who dies in a plane crash, and they both actually didn't know about each other at the beginning, but when they find each other, that's what the book is about, when they find each other and dealing with their grief. Okay, I actually gave this book 4.25 out of 5 stars. I really wanted to give it 5 stars because everyone else was giving it 5 stars, and I don't know, I felt like I should, but then actually in the beginning I did give it 5 stars, and then like 5 minutes later I was like, yeah, I don't think this is actually a 5 stars for me. Don't get me wrong, I really loved this book, and I think it was a beautiful story about grief and found family. I don't know if it was the writing style, because it was written in verse. It wasn't written in regular. It's written more like this, if you can see it. And I don't know if it was the writing style, but I think maybe that was the reason that I couldn't connect to the story at times. I don't know, maybe I'm not used to verse. This is the first Elizabeth Acevedo novel that I've read that's not in a traditional book. The other one I read was With the Fire on High, which I gave 5 out of 5 stars. I loved that one, but that was written in a more traditional way. But I don't know, I don't really read verse often. This is the first book that I read with verse, I think, so I think it was just a getting used to. And my other complaint about this novel was that Camino and Yahira always felt similar throughout the novel. Like, sometimes I had to like look at other context, things around, like outside people, like other side characters, to determine who was speaking, just because I think that they sounded really similar at times and I really could not discern who was who sometimes. And I think I don't know if this is true, but I think I heard that Camino and Yahira were actually one character originally, but then Elizabeth Acevedo decided to make them 2 characters, and I think that was what caused the problem of them being too similar, because they were originally supposed to be the same character. But yeah, other than that, I really enjoyed it, and a lot of the dealing with grief and found family was really touched my heart, and it was a beautiful story overall. And the last book that I read in the month of June was A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. This was actually a reread for me. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The reason I'm rereading this is because I read the first 2, but A Conjuring of Light I think came out in 2017, and I still haven't read it after like 3 years. And I don't know, for some reason this was a time where I was like, time to pick it up, but I had like literally forgotten everything from the first 2 books. So I'm reading those right now. I'm actually on A Gathering of Shadows right now. It was really nice to reread it, because I don't know, I just felt so nice to get back into the world, and in many ways it was like I was reading it for the first time. Like, I didn't realize how much of the story I had forgotten, so it was really nice to almost read it for the first time. Obviously there were parts that I remembered, but I don't know, like, I just loved rereading it. And I didn't realize in my previous reads of this book that this book actually takes a while to start, and I think that happens with her other Gathering of Shadows book too, like with this series overall, is that she takes a while to like settle in, and we kind of find out like what the characters are up to and what's going on with them before the actual story starts. I don't know, this was just something I noticed in this one, but once the story started, it was like full of adventure, lots of stuff happening, and I really loved it that. But yeah, this was a reread. I'm pretty sure I've talked about it before also, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. Anyway, these were all the books that I read in the month of June. I read a lot more than I usually do, which I'm really happy about. But anyways, please let me know what was your favorite book that you read in the month of June, as I would love to know. But that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Bye!